Now is Opportunity Lives editor John Hart. John, good to see you. Thanks for joining the conversation.
Good morning, Maria. It's great to be on.
The president says he will nominate a successor in the coming weeks. At the same time, the Senate says any nomination from the White House will be dead on arrival in the Senate. It's obviously the debate is heating up. How do you think this plays out?
Well, I think this has the potential to be a game changer in 2016. And the reason, Maria, is because we not only have one branch of government on the ballot with the presidency, but in a real sense, we have two branches of government that will be decided in November. So it's going to have a profound effect on the Republican race in particular, and perhaps the Democratic race as well. And we saw clues of that in the debate we just had Saturday night, where Senator Cruz, Rubio, and Bush really went after Donald Trump for not being a true conservative. So it's going to add a sense of gravity and weight to the race.
Right.
Because
no, I understand all of
these
that.
cases, as Peter just went through.
Do you think the president will be able to get his nominee through? Is really the question. I mean, I get the debate.
No, he's not going to get the nominee through because he has zero goodwill among senators because of his abuse of executive orders. So Senator McConnell feels like he's on very solid ground to not allow any person that Obama would nominate to go through.
Dagan, what do you think?
A recess appointment is possible for basically a short-term justice. It would run 2 years, and there's some debate because President Obama, because courts have shot down those recess appointments on the National Labor Relations Board, but there is some talk, and then I should point out that the White House has said that Mr. Obama there's no chance he'll use a recess appointment. But in theory, and you can shoot this down too, that the Republicans could ally with the White House and say, okay, we will let you do this and make a recess appointment for the 2-year period just to make sure that business on the court moves forward.
I think that's very unlikely to happen. And the reason is because, again, there's so little trust and there's so much animosity between the Obama administration and Senate Republicans and congressional Republicans.
Right. Yeah.
That it would be very, very hard to come to that kind of agreement, which would require a lot of nuanced details and discussions that Obama doesn't have the relationships to do that, sadly.
Hey, John, who in the GOP field does this really help the most? Is it the social conservatives like Cruz here who can use this to galvanize their support?
Well, I think it's going to help Cruz, Rubio, and Bush probably equally. It could be a very, very bad development for Donald Trump because, again, Donald Trump talks about, he compares himself to Ronald Reagan, but any conservative knows that when you think about the Reagan legacy, President Reagan was marinating in conservative ideas for years before he ran for president. 16 years before 1980, 1964, Reagan gave his famous "A Time for Choosing" speech. So 16 years ago today, Donald Trump was building casinos and gearing up to launch The Apprentice. So there's a big gap between conservative credibility with Trump and the rest of the field that has a good chance of winning.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
John, so my question is, if the Republicans are not going to approve any of his nominees, why didn't they wait to actually see who Obama actually nominates, as opposed to coming out right away and all of a sudden just saying they're going to shoot anybody down no matter what? Because I feel like that's going to give in more to a lot of the anti-establishment movement that's going on right now, because they're going to see this as Washington as usual. So why wouldn't they wait?
Well, I think they didn't wait because I think the conclusion is a foregone conclusion that President Obama will obviously nominate somebody who's going to be far to the left of where Republicans are. And again, we have two branches of government on the ballot now in November, not just one. So it's a serious and grave situation, and I think Republicans felt compelled to go out, out of the gate and say, no way, this is not going to happen. As long as we're in charge of the Senate.
But Ted Cruz runs a risk that if the Senate and the Senate Republicans do move ahead on a nominee, what if President Obama comes up with someone who at least seems middle of the road? If they move ahead, that destroys Ted Cruz in this presidential election, and maybe even Rubio, that they couldn't stop it.
Well, it wouldn't help them, but I think, again, you have senators who are themselves running for re-election. So I can't imagine that senators in swing states or states where President Obama won are going to want to go down a path of exposing themselves to that kind of criticism when they can just wait a few months and have someone who's going to be much closer to Scalia than a placeholder, which again, that's a very tricky proposition to even accomplish that.
Yeah, really an interesting dynamic here. John, thanks so much
Sure
for your
is.
insights.
You
We'll
bet.
see you
Thanks,
soon,
Maria.
sir. John Hart there.
Take care.
Let's